Good evening and welcome everyone to another episode of Showtime. I am your host, Marcus Shadow, and as you could tell, this isn't a podcast. So yes, this I guess is the first ever episode of Showtime that's not group and that's not a podcast. Joining me today is my cohort, my good friend, the stay-at-home dad gamer, Richter Hammer. Thanks for joining me, Richter.
No problem.
Today's episode is our Halloween episode because it is October and it's getting close to Halloween. And we just got finished watching Monster Brawl. Yes, it is a B-rated monster flick, people. Yes, we're a little more lo-fi than you think. It was requested of me to review this movie by fellow reviewer Chriz the Mole over at the Gaming Zone and the Comic Zone. So that's why I did it. It's actually worth the money. I enjoyed the movie.
Yeah.
This movie was written and directed by one Jesse T. Cook, who's kind of new on the scene. He's directed a couple things, one short, one, I think it was a movie. But he's pretty much an independent director. He did a really good job. It was decently written and decently well shot. So kudos to Jesse. And he got a great cast for it. Yeah. But we'll get to that momentarily. We will kick things off with the concept of the movie. The concept being, it's in the vein of a WWE pay-per-view event. In the backstage stuff, Jesse did mention that his original idea for it was he wanted to combine 80s monster flicks, and monsters from the 80s monster flicks, and the WWF of the 80s, and I think he did that pretty well, and I think he also incorporated some more modern wrestling stuff in there too, which was good to see. Richter, what did you think of the concept?
Well, I thought it was definitely a really awesome idea. He could have really just made a monster movie, and it would have probably, just kind of gotten lost in all of the other numerous monster movies. He could have even went a more actiony one where he has just the monsters and kind of wander across each other in street fight or whatever. And I thought this was a really cool, unique way to present it. Was he liked wrestling, and he could have just had him do wrestling moves, but I like that he styled it all after wrestling pay-per-views, and he really kept faithful to how all of that is with vignettes and the announcers and
the
all
promos.
That stuff. Yeah, it was a really good concept, and it was pulled off really well. And I can't think of any other movie that's anywhere close to this concept of literally melding two things like this and having it stay true to both of them at the same time, which was actually pretty. I thought it was a really good concept and definitely unique.
Yeah, it was essentially a love letter, like he said, to the 80s monsters, the classic monsters, because they had Wolfman, they had Frankenstein, they had a vampire, they had a witch. So those classic core movie monsters of the old school. Love letter to that, but it's also a love letter to wrestling entertainment, and that's not something you see a lot of, and oftentimes when people do it, they get it wrong. They make it really cheesy.
It is taking the WWE and just filling it with Darkstalkers. That's basically what it was.
Yeah, essentially, and making it darker, though. It wasn't as goofy, cartoony as Darkstalkers.
And with a little bit of Mortal Kombat. For the gore.
Yes. For the gore and for Mr. Lance Henriksen, which we'll get to. So overall, we give the concept a 2 thumbs up?
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. Alright, so we will now move on to cinematography, how the movie was shot, and, the fight choreography, because at its heart it is a wrestling movie, so there was quite a bit of action. As Richter alluded to, he also used vignettes, created vignettes for the backstory of each monster, showing how they got pulled into the tournament, kind of like the little, I don't know, I guess you would call them vignettes at the beginning of the original Mortal Kombat movie, showing how the main characters got pulled into the Mortal Kombat tournament. So it was done very much in that vein, and it was done well, and it made sense. You got Swamp Gut, who's essentially Swamp Thing, coming out of the swamp, and he kind of actually, with that character, put in a little message about the Earth in there, about how we're destroying the Earth with our pollution and stuff.
Well, I like that one was shot like one of those nature shows.
Yeah.
Where it's like, here's the creature in its habitat. That was it was a nice little touch, and I think it made it seem more realistic, actually.
Now, I wonder if they could have gotten an Australian to do the voiceover for that. But, overall for the vignettes, I thought it was very stylized. It was very well done. And, it was very unique to each monster. And then when they went to the promos, it was very WWE, WWF style, which I loved. Just seeing the monsters trying to cut a WWE promo.
Yeah.
What did you think of the cinematography?
The one thing I liked was the vignettes and the parts that weren't actually the fight were shot well. Stuff stayed in frame. It did not look amateurish, which, considering they're fairly new and, as they say,
no
special
budget.
features. Yeah, I forget his exact phrase, but yeah, he's like, tiny budget. But it actually looked professional, which is really good. And the fights looked a lot like WWE fights. They had similar cuts and similar angles that they do in actual wrestling.
Yeah. And they probably had the points mapped out of hit this move, hit that move. And after doing some digging, we actually found out that some of because it's chock full of indie wrestlers. Most of the actors for the monsters are indie wrestlers, independent wrestlers. And they actually went with those independent wrestlers' signature moves.
Yeah.
Which was, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. It's like, have them do what they know how to do.
They gotta hit their spots.
That is true. That is very, very true. But yeah, true. The wrestling is very true to form. It's very WWE, very formulaic, but at the same time, because it's being presented in a way that that wrestling hasn't been presented before, you still have that, what's going to happen next kind of thing, because you don't know what these characters are going to do, as opposed to if you're watching WWE, okay, this character's going to do this, this character's going to, this character's a heel, this character's a face, and this one you don't know because they're all monsters and they're all unique.
Yeah.
So,
have we done is with fight choreography? That's in this. Right?
Are you?
Okay.
Yeah.
One thing for me is they did have some good wrestling in the choreography. I could have definitely stood to have more wrestling moves and a little bit more wrestling, because they definitely had all their stuff, but it almost did feel like modern wrestling, where there's a lot of build up and then it's like a 2-minute match.
Yeah.
So I would have liked to actually have had a little bit longer fights, and considering these were indie wrestlers, a few more actual wrestling moves I think would have been cool. But that's it was still well presented and everything flowed really well. I just kind of wanted to see a little bit more wrestling action.
Yeah, I can agree with you there, Richter.
Well, with the prosthetics, I can see how there's only so much they can do. But
yeah, I was going to say, given the fact that they're in costume, they have a lot of makeup.
Yeah.
Like, you look at Lady Vampire, like, half her body was covered in, like, freaking body paint and, like, spirit gum stuff. It's like, they could try to do stuff, but they're going to end up destroying the prosthetics and the costumes and stuff. Or if you take, like, Swamp Gut, where a dude's in a fat suit, there's only so much you can do before he's going to pass out and die.
I don't expect Swamp Gut to be doing, like, shooting star presses and stuff. So, actually, no, he was fine, and Wolfman was fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, Wolfman, it was, like, he had, like, gloves and, like, a helmet on. That shit wasn't going to fall off.
Yeah, I know. No, yeah, the fights near the end, I think, were really good.
Well, and then that's what they were trying to build it up to the main
longer.
event thing, which worked. But yeah, if it's going to be a true to form WWE event, the matches should be a little bit longer, unless it's going to be a squash match.
Yeah, and they didn't have those.
No,
not with only like 8 people.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing too. Is each match, despite how short they were, had substance to the match.
Yeah.
They were decent matches, wrestling matches in their own right.
Yes,
and it actually did show off some of the skill of those independent wrestlers who were in the costumes being these monsters. And it amazed me just how much like the monsters they were, how like into it they got.
Yeah.
They got the stances, and they tailored some of the moves to the monster they were portraying. I really liked that. That showed that they could actually act. WWE, you need to hire some of these people. They can act better than your people. Anyway, and since we're speaking of prosthetics and whatnot, let's move on to costumes and effects. I thought with what they had, the costumes were really good.
Yeah.
With Swamp Gut, I really couldn't tell that it was a fat suit until I was watching the behind the scenes. They said it's a fat suit. I'm like, I thought it was maybe like half CG'd or something, But yeah, they did really good with the makeup and the costumes. I will say this with the vampire lady, and this one's for you, Mole. She had a little Buffy the Vampire Slayer thing going there with how they made her look like a vampire.
Yeah, the facial.
She looked like a Buffy vampire. Like it's like I was looking at Drusilla. I was like, whoa. But I guess that is the popular vampire look, so it worked. What do you think of the costumes?
I thought they were really well done, and some you could tell they were a costume, but they still they looked fine. They didn't really look cheesy. You couldn't see like where the the skull cap or whatever it was. You couldn't see that. It was definitely very well done, and you could tell that a lot of effort and time went into these costumes. And yeah, Swamp Gut especially, that was really detailed. I liked him, and I liked that he had like part of a soda can on him. Like that just kind of cemented it to me. Like I really like that small detail of
because he was made of garbage.
Yeah. You just see that there, and you're just like, oh wow, he's got a soda can in him. That's crazy. You know, like that was just that small detail that really showed me that they cared and that they were putting lots of effort into it.
Yeah, these costume designers and makeup artists were really, really skilled, and you could tell that they loved their craft. They did it for the love of the craft. In a production like this, with, as we mentioned before, a lower budget, people generally will do it for the love of the craft, not for the money or the fame or anything. It's because they love doing this stuff, and they're good at it. You know, they want to show that they're good at it. And these guys and gals were really good at what they did. They, as Richter alluded to, they blended the prosthetics perfectly with the makeup and the skin. Yeah. That's a really hard thing to do.
You know it's a prosthetic, but you don't see where it begins and ends, and that is key to making it look good. Especially
when you're doing a movie about monsters.
Yeah.
You need to make them actually believe, make the viewer believe they're monsters. And that's what they did with this. You could actually believe, like, the Wolfman was the Wolfman. Yeah. Because all that hair and the headpiece and stuff was blended into his skin and into the paint on his skin, the makeup on his skin. It was great. It was glorious.
Yeah, because the concept will definitely help, but it only goes so far. If they don't look right, it's not going to look great. And those two together, I think, since they were pulled off so well, made it look actually really professionally well done.
I agree. Pause. Okay. Hopefully they can hear you over that. So yeah, I agree with you, Richter. It was very well done. As far as effects are concerned, a lot of the practical effects worked, like the tombstones they had. Yeah. You know, because a lot of the monsters would pick up the tombstones and use them.
Yeah, those looked actually especially when they hit them and they broke. They looked like they were stone. I mean, obviously they weren't because they were just throwing them around, but you know, the way it broke, it didn't look like they just broke a styrofoam thing. I thought that was really well done.
Yep. And how about the Cyclops' eye laser? Which I would have to assume is probably a nod to the X-Men, because I don't recall the Greek Cyclops having an eye laser.
That was in a totally different version of the Iliad.
Yes.
That was Stan Lee's The Iliad.
Now I want to see that.
Yeah, it probably was. It actually looked pretty good. I like that he had to charge it up. I don't know, that just felt very Dragon Ball Z. Like, picture Piccolo, he's just like, you stay there for 5 minutes, lady. You know, Yeah, that was probably the only real. Well, that and I guess the Mummy's amulet was kind of the special sunlight, effects. Yeah,
that and Swamp Gut's spew.
Oh yeah, spew.
Although that might have been more practical, like the Witch's Brew.
It might have been like half and half. Yeah, because some of them look kind of like I think one of them looked a little bit more like I think that was an effect, but yeah. I mean they had lots of prosthetic blood, and while it was gory, it thankfully wasn't. It didn't seem like too overdone. It wasn't like Mortal Kombat, and that he'd uppercut a guy and like ribs would go flying everywhere. It seemed a lot more toned down, which I think helped it and kind of sold it as a little bit more realistic.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, as realistic as you could be with 8 monsters fighting each other in a secret graveyard
with Jimmy Hart blaring.
With Jimmy Hart. Yeah, all of the monsters, secret graveyard, Jimmy Hart, all of that is like not real. That's fantasy.
Indeed. The one practical effect that I had a problem with was the big tree trunk that Frankenstein was holding at the end. So when he picks it up and pulls it out of the forest, it looks real. It looks real enough. Yeah. Until the Wolfman punches it and snaps it in half, and then you realize it's completely fake. Yeah. You're just like, you had me up until you snapped the tree trunk in half, and then was it Art Hindle is like he just knocked the tree trunk out of his head. I was like, no, he just snapped it in half. It's like, oh my god. But no, the rest of the effects were good. One thing I should have mentioned in the cinematography. One thing I was disappointed in is when they have each of the monsters come out, they go through a tail of the tape thing, kind of outlining their strengths and weaknesses and stuff. which is fine. Except when they get to the Wolfman, one of the strengths the Wolfman has that they've listed out is moonshine power buff, where apparently if he drinks moonshine, he gets stronger or something. They never use that, and he's the only monster who never uses his special ability. Like, I was waiting the whole movie for him to bust out the moonshine, and he never did. And I was like, where's the moonshine? But I don't know if you felt the same way.
Yeah, I kind of... he was the only guy, it seemed like he didn't use his special, so that was odd. But for me, I thought that they said it was because it was like a moon joke. So I thought it was more like a joke, like, haha, moonshine, get it? And I was like, oh, okay. So, but it was odd because, like eye laser.
Oh, like the light of the moon giving the power.
Yeah.
See, they would have had to mean that more because, I'm sorry, and I'm not from the South or anything, but when I see moonshine, I think moonshine,
Like the jug with the 3 X's on it.
Especially with the accent the dude gave the werewolf. I'm like, a hardcore thought, moonshine.
Yeah.
I'm like, bust out the beer. But yeah, now that you mention it, maybe they were referring more to the light.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought of it.
Which is like, yeah. Unfortunately, that probably kind of killed it for me for the werewolf. Mm-hmm. I liked him. He was probably the best fighter in there. At least he had the most interesting fight scenes. But the fact that if that's his power, that's kind of lame. I'm sorry. Teen Wolf, you're lame. Anyway, let's move on to what actually sold the physical effects, and that was the sound design.
Yeah.
Because the sound design gave things weight. Like the aforementioned cement tombstones. The sound design gave it weight. When it hit, with that crumbling brick sound, it gave it weight. It
sounded like a breaking rock.
Yeah. Or like,
they had appropriate sounds at appropriate times, and it wasn't like kung fu movie cheesy, where he hits it, it's like, whoosh, where it's still like fun. It actually was more muted and it fit.
Well, they used most of the natural sounds in terms of the fighting with the wrestling moves, because it was a natural wrestling ring that they had. So you had the natural sound, like, wow.
Yeah, you get that ring noise.
Yeah,
whenever someone hits it. Yeah.
But like for instance, Robert Maillet as the Frankenstein monster. When he walked, they actually had the as he's walking, and it sells the fact that he's this humongous, monstrously overpowerful, monster.
Yeah.
And that's what sells it to the audience, and that's what sold it to me as a viewer of the movie.
And the monsters when they roared, or in the case of the werewolf, how
that was a good howl.
Yeah. Yeah, like those two. I'm assuming they did, something a little to them, but those definitely fit. It made them seem more, like when they roared, it seemed a lot more scary. It seemed more visceral. It wasn't just like the guy just going like, like they probably added some echo to it or something to make it sound more like a monster.
Sound realistic. Yeah. Well, one thing I do have to say, and it was probably the one groan-worthy part of the movie for me, where I just face-bummed and groaned, is the figure 4 leg lock.
That was awesome.
It was awesome, yes, but when the werewolf had the leg up and looked up and you saw the moon, I knew exactly what they were going to do, and when they did it, I was like, wow, Tribute to Ric Flair.
Yeah.
Woo!
I thought that was funny.
That was funny, but that was still groan-worthy.
Oh, it's totally groan-worthy. I feel like they gave Wolfman that just so he could do that.
Yeah.
They're probably in the middle of filming, and some guy's like, "Hey, dude, you should do it like Ric Flair," and they all just stare at him. And they're like, "Yes, he should." It's like the sound guy, and he's like, "Okay."
Actually, what I imagine is they're in the middle of doing it, and he's doing just the regular move, whatever, and then all of a sudden, Jimmy Hart brings it back and he's like, "Hey, he should do it like Ric Flair, man." They're like, "That's a good idea, Jimmy." I mean, he's a howler, yeah. But
he's a natural boy.
Yes. That would have been awesome, but yes. We can only speculate at this point about that. But so anything else you want to say about sound design?
No.
It was good.
I slid it in there. Yeah, it was.
Awesome. Alright, so we'll move on now to the actors. We're only going to go through a few of them, the big name ones.
Yeah.
We'll start with our, I guess he'd be our Jerry the King Lawler of the movie. Yeah. Actor and comedian Dave Foley. I thought he did a remarkable job.
Yeah.
I think he could probably hack it as a commentator. He's funny. he's a comedian. So naturally he's going to be funny. But he was funny in that role, which is a very hard role to pull off. I mean, anyone who's watched WWE, WWF, TNA, you can see how painful it is for some of those people out there trying to make the commentary interesting and trying to be funny. I mean, Jerry the King Lawler, he was great up until the recent years, and then he's kind of fallen flat when he's had to PG himself. But that's because he himself isn't PG, and so that's a very hard thing to do. And Dave Foley, I think, pulled it off very well in this movie. This movie definitely is not PG, but he didn't really go overboard in terms of non-PG elements with his take on a commentator, which I thought was awesome. The constant drunk thing, he pulled that off nicely. What did you think of Dave Foley?
I think he did a really good job. And just the thing with the drinking was he had so much alcohol in that tiny little flask. I bring that up, and Marcus is like, "Well, maybe he refilled it." I'm like, "Well, he would have had to." It's kind of like this movie's version of the gun that has like 80 bullets in it, where you never see the hero reload, but he always has bullets like that. It doesn't bother me. I just thought it was funny.
Well, the other thing with that too, now that you mention that, is this is supposed to be like a pay-per-view event, right?
Yeah, he's just drinking.
You take how much he's drunken. How has he not had to take a piss during this whole thing?
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, and he never got, sloshed or anything.
But he was a little bit sloshed near the end.
But with how much he was drinking,
true, good point.
He should have been like...
Well, it's not like he was drinking moonshine.
It's true. I don't know what he was drinking. He could have had Coke in there for all we know.
Yeah. Also, although doesn't he mention it's like scotch or something that he's drinking?
Oh, I think he does.
He mentions it once or twice that he's drinking some alcoholic beverage.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, you should be sloshed. But, so we'll move on next to his partner in crime, who we akin to the even more country than JR, if that's possible, Mr. Art Hindle. Richter and I don't really know him that well, the stuff that he's been in. We recognize some of the shows, but not the parts.
Yeah.
He's apparently pretty well known and a seasoned actor. He's done a lot of stuff, so he is definitely a seasoned actor. And he did a great job in this movie.
Yeah, he did.
Especially with where his character goes. We won't tell you what happens to his character, but suffice it to say, he really had to act, and act he did.
Yeah, I liked him as the announcer because he definitely had a good announcer voice. He sounded like he'd done that, and he's got his little JR hat on. But he acted very well, and I liked his voice, and I think he really embraced the part. It seemed, he really felt you thought he was that character, which is what a good actor obviously should do, but. Maybe partially is because we didn't know him very well, so we didn't see other roles he may have done in that. But
and we didn't go in with an expectation of how he was going to act.
But I thought he did a really well job because he made me think that was just him. Like they just literally put him in a booth and they're like, just say what's happening. And he's like, all right, I'm gonna do
it's gonna be a monster slobber knocker.
Yeah, he was good. I liked him. I thought he did a really good job.
He did an awesome job. So let's move on to the wrestlers. Oh wait, before we do, one wrestler, Robert Maillet, who old school wrestling fans may have known as Kurgan. Now, would you like to enlighten our audience as to who Kurgan was?
I believe he was one of the members of the Oddities group. It was a short-lived. They hung out with the Insane Clown Posse, and I'd say early Attitude Era.
Yeah, like 97.
90s,
he was Kurgan the Interrogator.
Yeah, I remember seeing him about 98 to, I want to say, maybe 99. But it was... They were around for a bit, but they were always mid-card guys. But he was like the big, huge dude.
Yeah, he played Frankenstein. Yeah. And he did it very well.
Yeah, he looked like Frankenstein.
He did look like Frankenstein.
Big, tall guy, so yeah.
Yeah, and he did big guy moves. He did a choke slam, which surprised me.
Yeah.
It was like... I kind of expected him to do it at one point, but I was like, oh, can he actually do a choke slam? Then he did a choke slam. I'm like, I wonder if he had that move when he was wrestling.
I just found it funny that he was like a large guy and A, had better mic skills as Frankenstein, and B, had better in-ring moves than Great Khali.
That's not hard to do.
I know, but they pushed Great Khali. What is wrong? Anyway, but yeah, he...
Not anymore.
Oh, okay, good.
That's why they have the Big Show.
True.
But we'll move on now to our last non-wrestler actor, the very famous, very great actor, Mr. Lance Henriksen, who you may better know well from Alien franchise.
Yeah.
He played Bishop.
Or Admiral Hackett for you Mass Effect fans. And the people
That is
played
true.
2 and 3.
That is true. But yes, Mr. Henriksen lent his voice talents for this movie as God.
Yeah.
Or, as we like to call him, the narrator and the Mortal Kombat guy.
Yeah.
Because he was always throwing out, like, pathetic, awesome.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool that they bothered to put it. Yeah, so he'd be like, he'd be like, great combo. And they would give it that. And you could tell it was him because it has that, that gravelly, Lance Henriksen. And they added like an after effect to it that it sounds actually like him and Shao Kahn. And I was like, man, they need to put him in the next Mortal Kombat. He did a really good job of
Frankenstein wins, decapitation. He's just like,
and he delivered the lines like very flat because he's supposed to. I'm fairly sure because I've heard him act in voice act. He doesn't do that, so I think that intentionally they wanted to do that, and he did that really well. And he would say the monsters' names and stuff like that, and it was a smaller part. It was only voice work, but I think it was really well done because he's got that really good gravelly voice.
They probably went to him and said, "Do it like Mortal Kombat," and he was like, "Okay."
He's like, okay.
Because this Lance Henriksen, he knows all that stuff. But yes, I was actually surprised they got Lance Henriksen.
I was too.
It's like, whoa, that's a big name.
In opening credits is like Lance Henriksen, and I was like, what? And he starts talking, I'm like, that is him. Wow, how'd they get him?
It is Charles Bishop Wayland. Indeed. And I think of all the actors, he made the movie. Because he was the constant throughout the entire movie.
Yeah. Telling
the stories. He did all the narration for all the vignettes. He did... he was God, as we say. He did all the background stuff. It just, the Mortal Kombat thing was just, it was just enough cheese without going over the top, and it made it fun.
Well, it's one of those small details that I really liked. It made it kind of threw in, the video game, like, Mortal Kombat thing, and, that and, like, the little Monster Brawl thing in the corner. Like, those little details really, that's what I love. Yeah, that's what really sells me on the experience and gets me to enjoy it, are those kind of things.
Indeed. Okay, so now our legend wrestlers. Moving on. Big Daddy Cool. Big Sexy Diesel. Kevin Nash. He's all gray and old now.
Still.
But he's buff. I was surprised how buff he was.
Yeah, he was a little too buff. I think he hit the juice bar, you know what I mean?
Well, it's not like he actually works for a wrestling company anymore.
True. Yeah.
And his best friend is his boss, so he doesn't care. But yeah, one thing that's surprising about Kevin Nash with this movie is how well he acted. I was surprised he could act. Because in the roles I've seen him, he doesn't really act that much. I mean, Super Shredder, right? The big Russian guy, that wasn't really a substantial part.
No.
And the funny thing is, in this B movie, independent B movie, his part was more substantial than the Russian guy in Punisher. He did a really good job, and he sold his part as Colonel whatever his name was.
He did a better job than he did in River of Darkness, that's for sure.
Never seen that.
Yeah, you don't want it.
Okay.
Him, Kurt Angle, Psycho Sid. If I need to go further...
I'm not reviewing that. I am not reviewing that, Mr. Phoenix. We are not reviewing that, Mr. Phoenix. But yeah, Kevin Nash did a really good job, and it's because they gave him kind of a subtle role, because he was very hushed a lot of the time. He was supposed to be very dark and menacing, and kind of, he's the conspiracy guy, he's the military guy, and he did very well with that role. Because when he starts speaking in a hushed voice, you're just like, ooh. Especially him jacked up like that, it's like, ooh, you get scared, you're like, oh crap, this guy's going to kick my ass. But what do you think of Mr. Nash?
Yeah, I think he did fine. The part that I don't know if this was him or the directing, or maybe but when he held the gun, it was all kind of, it was weird. He had his arm, it was like a little tiny pistol, and he has his arm like this, and I was like, what is that? I would think he'd have it straight. Maybe he can't bend his arm straight. I don't know, but it was just kind of awkward.
Yeah,
I don't know if it was him trying to, if literally he can't do it. I don't know if the director's like, well, no, hold the gun like this, or I don't know if it's some cross between, he wanted, or someone wanted him to stand out a little bit more from a normal military guy. So well, if he holds the gun a little different, we noticed it.
Right.
So I don't know if it was a way to make it different and stand out from a normal soldier. I don't know.
Well, logistically speaking, if you look at it too, at least the first time he does it he puts the gun up to that guy's head.
Yeah, like when he first does it.
Because the dude is shorter than he is,
and
because of the proximity, because he's so close,
yeah,
you can't really, do that. And you have to aim down if you're going to hit his head, because Nash is tall. Yeah. If he would aim it straight ahead, it would be over his head.
Well, the first time, I thought it was like because he was close to the guy. Yeah. But then with the zombies later, it was like, why is he doing it again?
Yeah.
That was kind of weird.
That was kind of weird.
I don't know what it was, but I'm not going to say exactly what happened, but he plays a part near the end of it where I was kind of like, oh, are they going to do this? And then he comes out and I'm like, I don't know how much of it is Kevin Nash's ego, like, I want to be near the last scene, or if it was, the director's just like, oh, I kind of want to do this. Like, so I don't know how much it was.
It was a little of both, probably.
Yeah. But
it was a good way to end it.
It was a pretty good way to end it, but you could kind of see it coming at a certain point. You're like, oh, I know what they're gonna do.
I wanted to see that last fight though.
And yeah. Well, I'd say Kevin Nash did a pretty good job, except for when he was getting attacked at one point. I'll say, where he's just like screaming. Like I was like, that was a bit kind of cheesy for me, but
to be a rated horror movie.
Yeah. That was their B-rated horror part right there.
Yeah, but they had to throw in something B-rated to make it B-rated, people. And finally, our last actor that we will talk about, the legendary Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart. What can we say? He played Jimmy Hart.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all I can say about it. He played Jimmy Hart. And it was awesome.
Yeah, I think he almost stole the show. Like, he was so entertaining to watch in all of his scenes. Because, I swear they gave him stuff to say, but then they were just like, okay, it's like, okay, you just gotta mention this and this and this about the werewolf. Go be Jimmy Hart or something.
The thing is, he played Jimmy Hart without the voice. Because he didn't do the obnoxious, high-pitched voice. Yeah. He used his own voice. Which, I'm like, dude, if you actually used your own voice as Jimmy Hart in, like, WWE, that'd be awesome. Yeah. I could actually stand and listen to him, because he's a very eloquent speaker. And his voice isn't that annoying. He's got that good southern twang, and he's got a good voice. But when he goes Jimmy Hart, it's like... It's kind of like Vicky Guerrero. When she goes Vicky Guerrero, the character, you just want to punch her. Yeah. But when she actually talks, her voice isn't that bad.
Yeah.
You can stand to listen to her. And so I thought Jimmy Hart, because he didn't go full-on Jimmy Hart in this, I thought
it was more...
It was tolerable.
Yeah, it wasn't like... WWF Jimmy Hart. No. It was like Jimmy Hart.
Yeah, the man.
Yeah.
Which was awesome.
Yeah, I thought he did a really good job. I think there's a reason that one of the special features is just like him talking, because I think he did kind of steal the show when he was there. But,
come on, when dude shows up with shades, a black and pink jacket, and a white and pink microphone or megaphone.
Well, honestly, when I saw the trailer for this, I kind of thought he would kind of have the role that the UFC ref had, where it was just kind of like for 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. Like, I thought Jimmy Hart was just literally going to be there for not that long. So I was pleasantly surprised, and I enjoyed it that he was there constantly throughout the thing, and he was always talking, and it was just really well done. I liked him. Yeah,
him and Lance Henriksen, they made the movie, I think.
Yeah, they were.
Because they were the two constants, and they progressed the story. Let's face it, they were the story.
Yeah. Not to take away from the other people, because I thought that the indie wrestlers they had and the other actors portraying the monsters actually all did really well.
They did very well.
Nothing really to compare it to. They did their jobs very well.
Well, they did it well, but if you think about it, the director
and they did like
Jesse,
18 different things.
Yeah, but the way it was shot, the way it was conceptualized, is it's supposed to be in the vein of a pay-per-view event. If anyone who's watched wrestling will tell you that what you're seeing on the screen, the matches are meaningless if you don't have the context behind them. It's that build-up that makes the match mean something when you're watching it.
Yeah.
And that's what like Lance Henriksen and Jimmy Hart provided, was that the context of the match. And then it was up to the indie wrestlers to make the match entertaining, which they did, because they were all very good. And so the whole total package of talent they had made the movie very entertaining, in my opinion. More entertaining than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And I was like, B-rated wrestling monster flick. It's actually pretty good.
Yeah, it was entertaining. I expected it to be far worse, and I was pleasantly surprised.
Yes. So, since we started talking about it, we'll go straight into our final thoughts, because that's all we have for the, ripping into it kind of thing and breaking it down. Richter, you want to give your final thoughts?
My final thoughts: if you have any interest in either, you watch wrestling or you like monster movies, I would say check it out. I really liked it. It's a unique concept. It's pulled off really well. And even if you, let's say if you really like vampires, you're like, oh, the vampire better win everything. Even if it doesn't, you'll still enjoy yourself. And if you, I'm not a huge like movie monster person or anything, but I like monsters. And I like wrestling, and seeing them together, it was done really well, and it's inspiring to see someone combine two things that they love in a way that works. Like most times, you get something that doesn't work.
Yeah, two things that wouldn't necessarily go together.
Yeah, they really kept the core essence of both, and I think people would enjoy this. If you have any interest in wrestling or monster movies, just know that it's a monster movie shot like a wrestling pay-per-view. And you're not going to get like pissed off or like, what, this isn't a monster movie, they're not killing people. Like, if you just understand that, and you'll be fine, and just enjoy yourself. It was nice.
Hey, Paul W.S. Anderson, this is how you do a zombie flick. Sorry, I had to throw that in there. So what would you rate this movie out of 10?
Out of 10? I'd say an 8. I actually really liked it.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, I will agree with Richter. I really enjoyed the movie. I will disagree on one thing, though. You almost have to be a wrestling fan to enjoy this movie because of the concept and the way it's shot. I've heard and seen some comments about this movie on some things, like YouTube videos of the trailers and stuff, where a lot of people were like, this isn't a movie, it's not shot. It's because it's not shot like a movie. It's not what they expect. Unless you go into this movie expecting a WWE pay-per-view event, you're not going to get it. Unless you know what to expect going in, you're not going to get it. And I think that's why Richter and I thoroughly enjoyed the movie, because we went in knowing we're going to basically see a bunch of monsters in a WWE wrestling ring and a WWE pay-per-view event. And expecting that, then when it was presented to us in that fashion, we're like, okay. And knowing that that's what they were going for, it's like, okay, they pulled it off. And because we're fans of wrestling and WWE, we can actually look at it and say, okay, did they pull it off? If you're a casual moviegoer, even if you're a horror movie fan, going into it, if you're not a wrestling fan or you don't expect the wrestling connection, you don't expect that it's going to be in the vein of a wrestling event, it's going to kind of throw you off, and it may even turn you off, as it has to some people. So I think definitely, if you're a wrestling fan and if you're a monster fan, go see this movie. Find it. You can find it for cheap. I got my copy for $15, and as you saw at the top of the show, it was a Blu-ray, so it's well worth the $15.
What was not on Netflix as of a few days ago? Because I did.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, there you go, folks. Not on Netflix.
Yeah, so hopefully. So just borrow a friend that has it or buys it, and then you can go see it.
But yeah, I definitely recommend this if you're a wrestling fan. Also, if you're a video game fan, because they had a couple of video game references. The Mortal Kombat stuff and
shout-outs to King Hippo.
Yeah, and a shout-out to King Hippo.
Having a King Hippo reference, that was cool.
I also like the Mortal Kombat uppercut reference.
Yeah.
Fatality. But yeah, so definitely, take what we say with a grain of salt, and do enjoy the movie. It's a great B-rated, independent monster film, and it's not your standard monster film. It's very unique and very enjoyable. So I will give this movie. I'll agree with you. I'll give it an 8 out of 10. It was good. You could tell it was an independent film, but it was a high-quality independent film. Yeah. There could have been some things done better. Like I said, I wish we could have got that one last fight. Because that's the one I was waiting for. That's the one I wanted to see. And it's like, no, you're not going to let him fight. But, yeah, so hopefully you've enjoyed our review of Monster Brawl for Halloween. It's a good Halloween film. It's fun. It's not really scary. It's more of a fun monster movie. Definitely. And so, do keep that in mind. So if you're looking for fun and monsters, there you go. James Phoenix, I know you're not a horror fan, but you won't get scared by this. I'm not a horror fan. I don't like scary movies. I love this movie. So
I wouldn't watch it around kids, though. There's not a whole lot of language that I remember. No. They're not like dropping F-bombs every 3 seconds or anything, but it is gory. Yeah.
And they'll get scared of the monsters, because the monsters are pretty realistic.
Yeah.
So, keep the kids...
So, even though it's fun...
back.
keep it to 18 and over. Or yeah, maybe 15 and over.
Yeah, about 15.
Yeah,
say 13 to 15.
So if you're a random 15-year-old watching this video,
so what is this rating?
And you're staying up late at night with your friends, and you like wrestling and beating each other up, probably you'll like this.
Oh well, look, not rated.
Well, of course not.
Sorry, folks, there's no rating on it, so we'll give it a rating, PG-13.
There is no nudity though. So.
They're pretty close, but no.
Yeah. So there's no nudity, just some swears and some violence. Yeah.
Or bikini.
That's a bikini.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's the thing is, this is a gory monster movie done tastefully, and that you don't find that, especially when it's dealing with wrestling and monsters. You would think taste would be thrown out the window, but this guy managed to do it tastefully, and for that we both give him big props, and we say, support this guy and check out his film because it's very, very well done for what it is, for what it cost.
Looks way more professional than their experience would lead you to believe.
Indeed, that their budget would lead you to believe. But with that, I will say thanks for watching, and I'm your host, Marcus Shadow, along with Richter Hammer, saying have a safe and happy Halloween, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Yes, I can assume it's over now. Shattered and confused, you left me broken. I guess I can assume it's over now. But you forgot the door and you left it open.
You look around and what do you see? A rainy morning in the QC. But through the unruly you see the beauty, and it's truly magnificent. Like you made a difference. Don't be a hypocrite, you know the reason for it. You finally let go.